afternoon we're going to be doing a rehearsal of Unaipon, which is based on the life of inventor, author, scientist and Australia's Leonardo da Vinci is what they called him at the time. So yeah, we're going to chat a little bit about his life and what informed the work of Unaipon. So let's all come together and we can have a yarn. This work was first created in 2004. It was a work that was commissioned for the Adelaide Festival. At the time, Stephen Page was the artistic director of the Adelaide Festival, and he commissioned this work to be made. It was a pretty important part of my career as I started to transition into choreography, and it was a work that I was really passionate about because what I found out, what was disappointing, was that this man who made such incredible contributions to our history and who we should be celebrating as a nation, that people knew nothing about him. That my generation, that your generation had gone through the education system and not known anything about this man. So my passion is that we use our art form as a vehicle that we can inform and educate, and we can tell people, the mainstream society, about our stories, about our mob, about our history, about our contemporary life, but also our traditions and the people who have made those contributions in the past. So David Unaipon was from an area, a community called Brauken, which is a really beautiful, very fertile, incredible area that's at the mouth of the Murray. There's two big rivers there. There's Lake Albert and there's Lake Alexandrina. And the community of Brauken is based at Lake Alexandrina, and that's the community where David Unaipon is from. I was really fortunate to, when I initially went down there first time with David Page and with my sister Gina, to meet his great-grandniece at the time, Auntie Melba. She's since passed away. But she was really generous and really excited to hear that a company like Bangarra were going to be telling his story and translating it into a language that speaks of tradition, speaks of story, of history, of past and present, and be able to share that story with the rest of Australia. So she gave us her blessings. This time around, I've had to go back and meet with her children because, as I said, she's passed, and her children really generous and really very supportive. But that role, it's a very important role, and we don't start anything in the studio until we do that, go back to country and meet the community and go through that process of ICIP, which is Indigenous Cultural Intellectual Property. It's a really important stage, if not the most important stage of creating a work, going back to country, getting the permissions from the elders, speaking to the community about what it is that you want to do, and really giving them, for them to hear, but also for them to give you the parameters of which you can explore that theme, that story, that person's history. The beautiful thing about Bangarra and what you guys have all experienced is when you take that back to country and you see the response of the community, and when that gifting back also inspires that younger generation to want to get more involved in being a part of inheriting that cultural legacy, inheriting that story. So it kind of reignites something. And it's really timely because, that word, to make fire, Bangarra, that's what it does. They give to us, we translate it into our interpretation of that story, and then we gift it back. And this process, this reciprocal process of gifting, really gives that is a resonance of that inspires them, but also inspires us. We have a reason, and that's a lot of us. I think when Tara, when you were a young person and Bangarra came through, I remember you as a child, and seeing Bangarra, and setting yourself that goal, and it's really important. We're always forward thinking. It's never about us. It's always about how we learn to pass it on, how we learn to carry it on to the next generation. So that process of going back to community, getting their blessings, and then taking that final product back is a real gift and a real honour. And hopefully, we'll get to take this back, and you guys will get to meet the family and the community. But that area that he's from, it's rich, it's amazing. You can see the night sky so clearly. His obsession with science, with astrology, with creating inventions. You can see from his country how that has inspired him and his mind, and how that natural world, his traditions, his Nunjari traditions have, he drew from that when he explored science, when he explored astrology and technology, and especially when he was doing his inventions. The other thing that he was famous for as well was collecting the myths and legends and being able to share those stories with mainstream society. He published in the Daily Telegraph in 1927, the first Aboriginal author to do that. And that was a series of stories, myths and legends that he shared. So at the time, there were, people didn't have that understanding of Indigenous people, and that they were continuing their traditions and how important their stories were, and that they were creation stories. So a lot of information, a lot of many layers, and that goes into informing the work. And the piece that we're working on now, Power, is really around that his world of science. Towards the end of his life, he was obsessed with creating an invention that could show perpetual motion and demonstrate that. And he was very passionate about that. And it's fascinating to see and to realize that dance and bodies and shapes and all of those scientific principles are really relevant to what we do in a space and as dancers, and applying those principles to the body, and how we can use force, we can use gravity, we can use mass, we can use velocity, we can use all of those scientific principles to help create energy and to sustain that and see how that feeds us as we move around the space, and how that informs the choreography. So I thought that maybe we would get up, we'd block through what we've done already and just have a little look at that. We'll pick it up from the top. And what else? Any questions so far? Okay, so let's go through from the top. Let's maybe block through what we've done from our north, south, east, west corners, and our transition coming on into the couples section. And if we can get up to that bridge section, that would be great, because it'd be really nice to see things. Okay, good. Okay, make sure you're nice and warm and ready to go. Thanks, guys.